In 2018, my 19-year-old son passed away. Most people would think that losing a child could devastate a parent, that they would never recover from that. Every human being has a story. We all have one or two or three gigantic stories of pain and suffering. The question is, do we want to go down that rabbit hole of continually suffering, or do we want to find a way to love ourselves?
You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Jonathon Aslay. He's an author, a speaker, and self-love advocate. Hello Jonathon, thank you for joining us today.
Anna, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What was the pivotal moment in your life that you realized that this is something that you are called to do?
Yeah. It's interesting, my journey, and this is going to take me about a minute or two to kind of give you the full flavor of it, to give you a little backstory. After turning 40 and going through a divorce almost 15, 20 years ago now, forget the exact date, I found myself back out in the dating marketplace. But at that exact same time, I also lost my high-end corporate paying job. So, and then shortly thereafter, there was the market crash of 2008. Okay. So not only was I going through a divorce, not only did I lose my high-end corporate job, not only did I get wiped out in the market crash, um, I was also lonely and I was single again, and I was
Mhm.
lonely. And why I'm sharing this part of the story is that online dating, so when I started online dating, and I'll be candid with you, I thought I could just plug in,
Hmm.
the perfect person and magically someone would
Yeah.
appear. And online dating was different 15, 16, 17 years ago. And I went out on a really nice date with someone, had a good time, but something wasn't right. Went out on another date with someone, something wasn't right. Another one. And in 1 year, I had over 100 internet dates.
Oh, wow.
I was going out twice a week with different people.
Yeah.
And after a year, I realized something wasn't right, was me. And right around that same time, the movie The Secret came out. And
Mhm.
I watched it and I remember, you know what? This resonates with me. And actually, about 10, 15 years before that, I got into metaphysics, and
Mhm.
Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, was a book that really
Yes.
was pivotal for me, but I kind of abandoned it. So by the time I'm going through all this emotional chaos, the movie The Secret came out. I said, you know what? I need to heal.
Mhm.
What's interesting though, at the same time, my online dating was kind of an addiction, and I wasn't aware at that time that that was going to turn into something really magical for me, because I was communicating with women all across the country, all over the world, it seemed like. And a lot of times I wasn't even going on dates. I'm just talking to women, hearing them share their stories about their divorce, sharing about their dating experiences and
Mhm.
everything. And Anna, what happened next floored me, because pretty soon women used to reach out to me and say, "Hey, Jonathon, could you look at my dating profile and tell me what you think to improve it from the male perspective?" And I'd give them my perspective. And then a few weeks later, I get a call from the same woman. "Would you look at the guy's profile and read it and give me the male perspective?" And the light bulb went off on my head. I'm coaching right now.
Mhm.
So I'm helping women, and I'm like, and I'm depressed, I'm broke, and I'm lonely. I then put up a website saying I'm a dating coach. This was 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And pretty soon, all of a sudden, I'm like, this was back when websites were a little bit of the Wild West. I was getting offers to help, I mean, reaching out for coaching and stuff like that. And I didn't realize that this addiction I had was morphing into my profession. But at
Mm.
the same time, as I'm helping women grow, I'm studying relationships. I'm reading every book I can get my hands on personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. And little by little, I crawled myself out of this emotional hole that I was in for almost half a decade. I mean, there was a period of time where I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up.
Mm.
And little by little, I crawled out because all of the personal development, self help, and spiritual work was putting up scaffolding in my life. I like to think of it as a building when you put scaffolding so you can
Yes.
protect everything on the inside so it doesn't spill out in the street. And that was the initial phase of my, for lack of a better word, awakening, I'll call it.
Mhm.
But there's more to this story. But before I go into it, if there's anything you want to ask about that, I'm more than happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, online dating is something that I would say blown into proportion that is like everywhere. So many sites, apps, but still, even though we have a lot of options nowadays to
Yeah.
find the right person, the right match, it's not like you right swiping and there is a match. It's just like more to it. And like you mentioned, a lot of people that sitting on the other side of that app, they are just, sometimes they don't know what they doing, why they doing that, and they not really committed into going into a relationship. It could be for different reasons,
Yes.
and addiction is one of them, and we don't realize that or that the person who we're speaking with, could be dealing with a lot of emotional, insecurity, trauma, and some healing that's going on. And that is just one way of distracting themselves, really.
There's no doubt. For me, the addiction was I needed someone to love me so I can feel good about myself. I need someone to rescue me from this.
Mhm.
And as I'm digging myself out of the hole financially, and as I'm actually building this business and I'm building more confidence within myself, I immersed myself, as I said earlier, in personal development, self help, spiritual work, and
Yeah.
therapy. And why I'm such a big proponent of that is um, the next part of my story is in 2018, my 19-year-old son passed away. And there's a picture of him right there when he
Mm.
was a younger, when he was a infant.
Mm.
And most people would think that losing a child could devastate a parent, that they would never recover from that. And in many cases, that does happen. What I realized and what I recognized was all of that scaffolding that I built, emotionally speaking, by doing the personal development, doing the self help, doing the spiritual work, doing the therapy, was actually preparing me for this next evolution of what I went through was the devastating loss of a child. And I made a conscious choice. I remember it was I was giving his eulogy. This was within two
Mm.
weeks of his passing. And I said to the audience, or to our family and friends, I said, we have a choice. We can suffer, we can grieve with suffering, excuse me, or we can
Mm.
grieve with love. And at that moment, I made the conscious choice to immerse myself in what I call self-love, and which I think is our self-worth, our self-esteem, our self-confidence, our
Yeah.
self-reliance, our self-discipline, all of these self-worths. And I began writing my second book, which I'll just share with you right here. It's called What the Heck is
Mm.
Self-Love Anyway,
Yeah.
which is a journey of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. Because I believe because I did work on myself. And when I say work on myself, I mean healing the childhood wounds and adult traumas that caused me to have negative patterns, limiting beliefs, insecurities, fears, judgments of others, resentment, guilt, shame. As I began loving myself in all of those nooks and crannies of emotional pain, I used my son's passing as a catalyst to be encouraging individuals to explore what self-love means for them.
Mhm.
And and you know, we all, every human being has a story and
Yeah.
a I fell down story, if you will. Sometimes it's in a very emotionally toxic, violent way. Sometimes it's the ending of a treasured relationship. Sometimes it's the loss of a loved one. We all have one or two or three gigantic stories of pain and suffering.
Mhm.
The question is, do we want to go down that rabbit hole of continually suffering, or do we want to find a way to love ourselves in that process? And that's been the journey I've been on. And so coming back to, remember I said earlier I wanted to be rescued?
Yes.
You know, I I mean, you know, listen, we all human beings want companionship, we want connection, we want physical intimacy. But the motivation behind it ideally should come from a healthy place, because when two healthy people get
Yeah.
together, it's going to be a rather, blessed experience. It's when we have emotionally unhealthy people getting together, it's a lot of chaos. And coming back to the online dating, yes, it's a very marginalized way of connecting, but at the same time, it allows us access to people we wouldn't otherwise be able to meet in our daily lives. So it's a blessing and
Mhm.
a curse.
Right.
I'm here just to encourage that if we enter into it with a sense of self awareness, self responsibility, knowing yourself, being conscious, working on healthy communication, we can certainly have better relationships with others. And I'm going to let you ask any questions on that, but I have one more part of my
Of
story that
course.
I'd like
Yes.
to
I want to
share
hear
before we
that.
wrap up. Yeah.
All right.
So,
So, like
yeah.
you see, the self-love is a very crucial component with us really coming into relationship, because I believe that with us really find that place where we connect with our like inner child, with um, being aligned really with our values. What is it that we stand for? So really understanding ourselves on a deeper level and
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to feel. A lot of times we're not really in that place where we feel safe to feel our emotions. And that's where we really stuck everything and it piles up, but it never goes away. We can't
Yeah.
escape that. It's like an illusion with us trying different type of addiction and distraction from, giving our attention to something else, but it usually stays in the same place until we are courageous enough to face it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's interesting to me, Anna, I'm sure you've heard the phrase feel your feelings, and, and your
Yes.
feelings, are matter and all that sort of thing. What I've observed with a lot of humans, though, when it comes to their emotions and feelings, is that you're actually, whenever you're feeling fear, insecurity, doubt, judgments, resentments, joy, happiness, all those things, you might be feeling it. But in many
Mhm.
cases, particularly the ones of fear and insecurity and such, or 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 maybe a need that isn't being met through a relationship with another person. Oftentimes, I've observed humans don't really know how to evaluate their feelings and, more importantly, articulate them to another person. So you might feel rejection in a moment. That's what you're feeling. Let's just say in relationship. In other words, your partner said something to you that triggered you and you're feeling something. But many times I've witnessed people don't know what the core feeling is. More importantly, they don't know how to articulate that feeling in a way that doesn't come off as confrontational to the other person. And this takes a deeper understanding of oneself, a deeper self awareness to really just interpret your feelings and then be able to express it. And I say non-violent way because, or confrontational way, excuse me, because oftentimes we have a habit of saying, well, you didn't do this and that's why I felt this way. Instead of, I'm feeling an ouch
Yeah.
and I want to share it with you so we can kind of come to a mutual beneficial, helping of one another. This is where I see a lot of people fail. So I shared with you a moment ago, there's a third part to my story.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many parts to my story, but these are three big ones in my life. So here I am, a dating and relationship coach. I went through a divorce, almost 20 years ago now. And I was in a significant relationship about 7 or 8 years ago that lasted about 6 years. And I found myself
Mm-hmm.
single again. And and I'm in the dating marketplace. I'm a coach and I'm feeling a little bit of, imposter syndrome because I'm not
Right.
in a relationship. And then, well, it'll be 3 years ago, in a few months, I met someone and it
Mm-hmm.
was a long distance relationship. And we had built up some familiarity with each other. We met. I was going to Chicago. I live in Los Angeles. So I was going to Chicago for a wedding, and we met, and we began a relationship together. And shortly thereafter, we moved in together,
Mm-hmm.
or she moved out here. Now, I'm sharing this story because I fell deeply in love with somebody. I was all in. I was experiencing all the things I kept talking about on my videos and my coaching. I'm now embodying this.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize in the course of a year, she didn't like living here. And there
Mm-hmm.
were some other things that were misaligned between the two of us. And why I'm sharing this is she ended the relationship a year ago. I was emotionally devastated. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't act that way outwardly. I was very stoic. I actually did what's called a spiritual bypass. I
Mm-hmm.
I denied the real pain of now. This isn't blaming her. We had a very good relationship and I understand her choice, okay? But her choice was collateral damage to me because it was the death of a dream, death of this investment I made in this other person. And I use the term death only in the context of, not in the physical sense, but this relationship ended.
Right.
And for the first 6 months, I didn't realize this, but I was in shock. And I was the stoic person out there, get through a breakup, blah, 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 because I'm trying to, be a role model for my,
Yes.
my followers and fan base and my clients and all that stuff. And then I had this awakening. I didn't properly grieve the ending of this relationship. I didn't get angry. I didn't do the things that, grief,
Mm.
entails, meaning I didn't properly heal.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. As cognitive as I am, as self-aware I am, I was in denial. It wasn't about getting the person back. I just was denying the ouch.
Mm.
And so as I leaned into the pain, I began releasing more of that need for someone else to love me so I can feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past year, I've done another healing process, more emotional scaffolding. But more importantly, now I feel very attuned to who I am and what I really want. And most importantly, and not to disparage the other person, there was red flags of misalignment, but there were a lot of great green flags too in our
Yeah.
relationship. I was meant to go on this journey because we had lots of green flags, but there were a few red flags, and not character flaw red flags, just misalignment.
Mm.
As I approach my life now, I recognize that going back that almost 20 years ago when I went through a divorce and I lost my high-end corporate job, which was my identity, and I lost all my money, which was my security, and I lost a relationship and I was alone. And I've been on almost a 20-year path to really find out who I am and what I really want from a, for lack of a better word, self-love place.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I am by no means perfect. I'm going to tell you, I'm just as
Of course.
impetuous and insecure as, anyone else out there. Um, but what I am experiencing now is something I never experienced before, and that was
Mm.
genuine trust and faith in myself. And so as Joseph Campbell calls it, the hero's journey, as Alison Armstrong calls it, going through the tunnel, we all have an experience that has caused us pain, suffering,
Mhm.
discomfort, doubt, so many things. I'm just here to encourage, coming back to, I'm not selling my book. It's, by the way, my book is a very simplistic, very basic first grade level of understanding of this. But what I'm an advocate for, and I use the dating conversation. I'm an advocate. Dating and relationships trigger what I believe is the number one emotional health wound. And that is, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not likable. And dating and relationships trigger this. So I'm an advocate for human beings to really immerse themselves in inner work because, I do believe it brings us more joy than suffering.
Yes, it's so much to take in from your
I know.
story, but yeah, it's very like inspiring for other people to see how, like you said, we're all imperfect in one sense or another, and that's what makes us human. It's normal for us to go through ups and downs, to really face our insecurities, right? And like you just mentioned, when we come into a relationship, there always going to be a trigger of
Yeah.
what is not being healed before you enter that relationship.
Yeah.
And I always refer to as a mirror. You're going
Yeah.
to see a mirror in the relationship that the reflection you might not like, but it's not because the other person is doing a bad job, or like we're trying to blame the other person, right? But rather it's just inevitable for you to face it. If you didn't face it before within yourself, this is another chance, another opportunity for you to see it firsthand, right? And again, you can either withdraw yourself, or you can look at it from a different perspective and take it as an opportunity to heal and grow, and give yourself chance to find that alignment, to realign and really start loving yourself on a deeper level. Because again, that stability that you found now, right? It took you years to come to this place. But again, with you not, willing, if you were not willing to face what is coming up to the surface, how come you can just come to this place? It's just impossible for you to find that stability or peace or safety without requiring, external person like to come and rescue you, right? So um, you have to find that courage to face the emotions, to heal your trauma
Yeah.
or whatever was not resolved, some kind of perhaps experiences that you have in your past that brought you to this point in time. And people that come to your experience, again, everything is, it's not a mistake, let's say, right? Like you just mentioned, some people could have green or red flags, but the reason the person is here in your present moment is for a reason.
Yes, it's interesting as I reflect back after sharing this with you. Um, I reached that point of going to bed wishing I didn't wake up. I mean, it was like, and I had two small
Yeah.
children at the time. Um, at that moment, and I'll be candid with you, I was drinking and I was doing drugs, to get through the day. And I
Mhm.
had online dating too, which was kind of a blessing and a curse. It was an
Yeah.
addiction, but it turned into an absolute passion for me. So I don't want to discount the addiction in it of itself.
Mhm.
But I'm very fortunate. A lot of angels came into my life. First was I'm going to thank my mom and dad because they helped me kind of regroup and I briefly moved in with them.
Mhm.
Um, and And just to give you some context, I used to live in a $2 million home at one point in my life. And now I'm
Mm,
living in a 100 square foot box with my mother and father in a retirement community. But I had a
yeah.
safe space to go. And to some degree, they were angels in my life. And then all along the way, I've had so many angels come in and support me. I had one woman who helped me with my website and she did it for
Mm,
free. I had another woman who helped me ghostwrite my book. There's all these angels that come in our lives.
yeah.
And and I was learning to appreciate all of the blessings when I was open and receptive to it. So, you know, to the extent that we do this journey on our own, there's also a lot of amazing people, I believe, angels, as I say, that come into our vortex that are
Mm-hmm.
nudging and pushing ourselves along the way. So, in the case of that relationship that ended, in many ways, she was a gigantic gift in my life. And so we have a
Mm,
choice. And I talk to women habitually as an example where their relationship ended and it's just continued to be pain and suffering. And blaming the other person and feeling jaded about the male population or the female population. And that's not going, I mean, I'm just here to be blunt. You can experience that. If that's your choice, you experience it. But at the same time, there's always an alternate way of looking at something.
mm-hmm.
And not to suggest, look at if someone punched you in the face, I don't want to say that was a mirror of what's going on. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to always say everything is a mirror. Um, I meant randomly, or, someone punched you in the face, so to speak, because I don't think we attract those things in. But I do believe we can find, for lack of a better word, a silver lining in every experience
Yes.
versus holding on to pain, suffering, judgment, bitterness, angerness. I do believe we have the power to choose healthier.
Yes.
I don't want to use the word healthier emotions because even a negative emotion is a good thing. It's telling you something.
Mm-hmm.
um but to experience more, for lack of a better word, contentment or joy, I do believe we have the power for that. And that's where inner work helps, as I said, build the scaffolding for that.
Yes, and everything has a silver lining, and it's like indications for us to see that, something is misaligned, something requires our attention, and it's our choice to look into that further. Because usually sometimes, like the way it starts, it whispers, then it, speaks louder, and then it
Yeah.
screams. And then people find themselves in an extreme situation where the screaming is so louder, where you don't have no other choice but to look into that, right? So in one way or another, you will come to the point where you have to face it. It's just up to you if you want to do it when it's still, you have a choice, and it's your um, kind of willingness to go further and explore, and to not take it as something bad is happening. If you start
Yeah.
labeling it as bad or good, it's no benefit for you. But if you know that everything is happening for your own good, right? So everything in your path is for your, let's say, evolution and expansion, right? As a human
Yeah.
being. So nothing is bad, really. It's just, it could be unpleasant in this present moment, but again, the way you look at it matters, and you give it a meaning.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. You've nailed it.
Yes, and the spiritual part in terms of, like you just mentioned, angels coming into our life, right? We always say, sometimes we find ourselves feeling lonely, and we think we are alone in this world. But really, it's just, I think sometimes, again, it's given us the universe, giving us the opportunity to come back to our true nature, and to realign and really find our true, or I would say like highest self, that is guiding us through this journey. And we always guided, supported, and helped along the way in one way or another. And we have to listen, to be in that place of stillness and, just see what's happening in that present moment. Because with us not being aware, not seeing what's happening, that's where we really like withdraw our attention and create the worst case scenario in our mind,
Yeah.
what could be happening. But really everything is kind of like provided for you. You have all the tools available at your disposal right now to go to that next step, right? So you just need to um, really give yourself this priority. Like I would always say, you have to
Yes, I want to,
prioritize.
yes, and I want to piggyback on that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of times we human beings are caught in the doing. We have to go to work, we have to pay our bills, we have to raise our children,
Yeah.
we have our elderly parents to take care of, we have our exercise routine, all of these types of things. There's a reason why people who give themselves anywhere from 15 minutes, an hour a day
Mm-hmm.
to whether it's meditating, maybe it's physical exercise as well, but truly giving yourself 15 minutes to an hour a day of emotional health or emotional um, work, if you will. And I don't want to characterize that. There's something better to say, but please forgive me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I invest an hour a day in my life to my inner journey, as well as all those other things. And it might be listening to a podcast like this. It might
Yes.
be reading a book. It might be doing a meditation and really begin to become aware, as I said way earlier in this conversation, really become aware of your feelings. Really begin to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to what are you feeling, identify it, and then practicing articulate those feelings, particularly when you're interacting with someone. Because and there's a chapter in my book, first chapter one is speak your truth, do it with kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not that non-confrontational way, but ultimately for those here that are desirous of a relationship, let me just say this. When you become attuned to who you are and what you want, you speak your truth from a sincere place, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And I
Yes.
just want you to know that. When you're in a good place and sincere and you're with the right person, you can be vulnerable, you can be authentic, you can be transparent, and they're going to hold space for you. So those are just a couple lessons I have for you today.
Yes, definitely. And that place of vulnerability and authenticity, that actually what is the foundation of our connection in relationship.
Yeah,
And we are afraid being vulnerable because we don't feel safe. And
yeah,
why don't we feel safe? It's another question. And that comes back to self-love, self-worthiness, and with us really, like you mentioned, giving ourselves time every single day, making ourselves a priority, knowing that we are important and
yeah,
really doing something about it, not just talking about it, but showing yourself that I'm going to treat you as the most important thing in my life. And this is how I'm going to do this. This is how you're showing yourself that you are worthy and you are important.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I'm so glad we had this conversation. And for those who would like to connect with you online, how can they find you?
Well, a couple things. If you're watching the video, my name is listed there. You can put it into Google. My YouTube channel, it would be a great place to start. I mean, I record 5 or 6 videos a week talking about mostly men and women in relationship. And from a dating perspective to a relationship perspective, I would definitely check out my YouTube channel. You can go to my website, which again is my name, Jonathon Aslay. You could click on the link to join my mailing list. I mean, you could certainly go to Instagram and Facebook, but my encouragement is go to my YouTube channel, listen to some of my videos. If it resonates with you, then continue to listen and share with friends. If it doesn't, I'm encouraging you all on a journey of self discovery and invest in yourself and what we call self love, or at least what I call self love. or my interpretation of self love, which is self worth, self esteem, self confidence, self reliance, self discipline, all those juicy self worth words, because I believe this journey of life is meant to be experienced in both an outer world way and an inner world way.
Definitely, and I will include that in show notes as well. As we close today, what would be the final thought for our listeners?
Um, I almost feel like I'm on the spot. Um, you know what? Okay. I'm gonna. I've never said this before in an interview, but I'm going to invite you all to look deep and ask yourself, what's your greatest fear? What's your greatest fear? If it's public speaking, it's public speaking. If it's you're afraid to be in a relationship, then it's that. Write down that greatest fear. And I'm going to invite you all to decide how you want to conquer that fear. Do it inward. Just invite yourself to go, I'm going to conquer this fear. And it might simply be, if it's the fear of speaking, you might just get on a Facebook Live for just 3 minutes and just talk. Just do one little thing. Just and I want it to be the tiniest little thing to push outside of your comfort zone. And if you did it one day, do it another day and do it another day and see how that feels. Anyway, that's my invitation for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great spot to start, and I'm so glad that we had conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And as we close, I just hope you enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.